The Velthari Empire had ruled the stars for 11,000 years. They had conquered 40 species. They had built cities on 1,000 worlds. They believed they were the greatest power in the galaxy, and for a very long time, they were right. Fleet Commander Zorath sat on his command throne aboard the Eternal Sovereignty, the largest warship in the Velthari fleet. He was old by Velthari standards, nearly 400 years old, and he had seen many things in his long life. He had watched planets burn. He had ordered the death of millions. He had never once felt afraid. That was about to change. "Commander," said his sensor officer, a young female named Melith, "we have detected an unknown vessel near the Kepler transit point." Zorath turned one of his 4 eyes toward her station. The Kepler transit point was an important location. It was where 3 major trade routes met. Any ship passing through that area would be noticed. "Show me," he said. The main screen flickered and displayed the unknown ship. Zorath leaned forward slightly in his throne. The vessel was unlike anything he had seen before. It was ugly. That was his first thought. Where Velthari ships were smooth and elegant, this ship was rough and angular. It had sharp edges and flat surfaces. Its hull was covered in thick metal plates that looked like armor. Actual physical armor, like something from ancient history. "How primitive," Zorath said with a small laugh. "They still use metal plating for protection. Our weapons would cut through that in seconds." "Should I scan it, Commander?" Melith asked. "Yes, full deep spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about this ship and its crew." Melith began the scan. This was a routine procedure for the Velthari. Their scanning technology was the most advanced in the known galaxy. A deep spectrum scan could reveal every detail about a vessel. It could detect power systems, weapons, life signs, even the emotional states of the crew. Nothing could hide from a Velthari scan. The scan would take about 30 seconds to complete. Zorath used this time to study the strange ship more closely. It was not small. He estimated it was about half the size of his own vessel, which made it a medium-sized warship by Velthari standards. But something about it bothered him. Something he could not quite identify. Then he realized what it was. The ship had no windows. Not a single one. Most species liked windows on their vessels. They liked to see the stars. But this ship was completely sealed, like a fortress designed to keep everything out, or to keep something in. "Commander," Melith said, and her voice sounded strange. "The scan is detecting unusual readings." "What kind of readings?" "The crew. Their biological signatures are... I have never seen anything like this." Zorath felt the first small hint of unease. "Explain." Melith was quiet for a moment as she studied her screens. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "They are from a heavy gravity world. Much heavier than any world in our records. Their bodies are designed to survive conditions that would crush a Velthari." "How heavy?" Zorath asked. "Nearly 10 times the gravity of our homeworld." Zorath's 4 eyes widened. That was impossible. No intelligent species could evolve on such a brutal world. The energy required just to move would be enormous. The strain on their bodies would be constant. It would be like living under a mountain. "Continue the scan," he ordered. "I want to know more." Melith obeyed, but her hands were shaking slightly. More data appeared on her screens, and with each new piece of information, her face grew paler. "Their skeletal structure is incredibly dense," she reported. "Their bones are as strong as metal. Their muscles are designed for explosive power. A single member of this species could lift weights that would require a machine for us." "They are strong," Zorath said, trying to keep his voice calm. "That does not make them dangerous. We have weapons. Commander, there is more." Melith turned to face him, and he saw real fear in her 4 eyes. "Their blood carries a chemical that increases their physical abilities when they are in danger. When they are threatened, they become even stronger, even faster. Their bodies are designed for violence. Zorath said nothing. He stared at the ugly ship on the screen and felt the unease in his stomach grow stronger. What else? He asked quietly. Their senses are sharp. They can see in low light. They can hear sounds outside our range. They can detect motion from great distances. Malith paused. Commander, these beings evolved as predators. Apex predators. Everything about their biology is designed for hunting and killing. The bridge had gone silent. Every officer was listening now. They had all conquered species before. They had all seen aliens of different shapes and sizes. But they had never heard of anything like this. Surely they are primitive, Zorath said. Creatures like this could not develop advanced technology. They would be too busy fighting each other. Malith shook her head slowly. That is what I thought too. So I accessed their ship's database. It was not well protected. I found their historical records. And, Commander, they call themselves humans. They have been in space for only 200 of their years. Zorath felt a moment of relief. 200 years was nothing. The Velthari had been in space for over 10,000 years. These humans were infants compared to them. Then they are young, he said. Inexperienced. They cannot be a threat to the Empire. Commander, please look at this. Malith put an image on the main screen. It showed a planet, blue and green and white, beautiful in its way. But the image was old, historical. This is their homeworld, Malith said. This image is from their year 1944, 1 year before they invented their first weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction? They created a device that releases energy by splitting atoms. A single device, no larger than this bridge, that could destroy an entire city. Kill hundreds of thousands of beings in a single flash. Zorath stared at the screen. That is impressive. When did they first use this weapon? In their year 1945, they used it on themselves. The bridge was completely silent now. Zorath could hear his own heart's beating. They used it on themselves? He repeated. Yes, Commander. They were fighting a war against each other at the time. They used these atomic weapons to end the war. They killed over 200,000 of their own kind in 2 attacks. Zorath tried to understand what he was hearing. A species that would use weapons of mass destruction against itself. A species that would kill hundreds of thousands of its own people just to win a war? What kind of beings were these humans? There is more, Malith said. After they invented these weapons, they did not stop. They made them bigger, more powerful. Within 20 years, they had weapons that could destroy entire planets. They built thousands of them. They pointed them at each other. Why? Zorath asked. They had a concept called mutually assured destruction. Both sides knew that if one attacked, the other would destroy them in return. So neither side attacked. They lived for decades with enough weapons to end all life on their world, and they called it peace. Zorath felt cold. He had conquered species before. He had destroyed civilizations. But he had never encountered anything like this. A species that was so violent, so dangerous, that they had almost destroyed themselves. And instead of learning to be peaceful, they had simply found a new way to channel their violence. Commander, Malith said, I scanned their weapons. Tell me, this ship, which their database classifies as a medium cruiser, carries weapons that could destroy our entire fleet. They have railguns that fire metal projectiles at 3% of light speed. They have missiles with antimatter warheads. They have enough destructive power on this single ship to burn a continent. Zorath looked at the ugly human ship floating in space before him. It was half the size of his vessel. A medium cruiser, they called it. And it could destroy his entire fleet. Commander, Malith whispered, What do we do? Zorath did not answer. For the first time in 400 years, the great fleet commander of the Velthari Empire had no idea what to do. He only knew one thing for certain. They should never have scanned that ship. On the bridge of the USS Defiance, everything was calm. Captain Marcus Webb stood near the main viewport, watching the alien ship through the reinforced glass. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. He had been in the Navy for 30 years, and he had learned that the most dangerous moments were often the quietest ones. "Sir, they scanned us," reported Ensign Danny Liu from his station. Danny was young, barely 25, but he was good at his job. "Full deep spectrum analysis. They got everything." "Everything?" Webb asked without turning around. "Hull composition, power systems, weapons, crew numbers, biological data. The works." Lieutenant Commander Katie Morgan looked up from her tactical display. She was Webb's second in command, a sharp woman with red hair and a quick mind. "They know what we are now." "Yes, they do," Webb said quietly. He turned away from the viewport and walked back to his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew continued their work with professional calm. They were all veterans. They had all been trained for moments like this. "What do we know about them?" Webb asked. Katie pulled up information on her screen. "The ship is Velthari, Empire species. They have controlled this region of space for about 11,000 years. What kind of empire?" "The bad kind." Katie's voice was flat. "They conquer other species and use them as slaves. Force them to work in mines and factories. Strip their worlds of resources. Any species that resists gets destroyed." Webb nodded slowly. This was not the first aggressive empire humanity had encountered since leaving Earth. It probably would not be the last. "How many species have they conquered?" he asked. "At least 40 in this sector alone. Probably more that we do not know about. Military strength? Massive. Thousands of warships. Millions of soldiers. They have been building their forces for thousands of years." Webb considered this. The Defiance was a good ship, but she was just one vessel. If the Velthari decided to attack, she could not win against their entire fleet. But that was not how humans thought about war. "Sir," Danny said, "the alien ship has stopped scanning. They are just sitting there." Katie smiled slightly. "They found our history files?" Webb allowed himself a small smile as well. "Then they are having an interesting day." On the other side of the void, Fleet Commander Zorath was indeed having an interesting day. He was having the worst day of his 400-year life. Melith had not stopped talking. The more she analyzed the human data, the more horrified she became. "Commander, I found more about their history. Their species has been at war almost constantly since they developed civilization. They have killed each other by the millions. Hundreds of millions. In just the last century of their homeworld history, they fought 2 global wars that killed over 100 million beings." "They are savages," Zora said. He meant it as an insult, but his voice was weak. "No, Commander. That is what I thought at first. But look at this." Melith displayed new data on the screen. During the same period when they were killing each other by the millions, they were also making incredible advances in science, medicine, and technology. They cured diseases that had plagued them for centuries. They built machines that could think. They put members of their species on their moon. How is that possible? I do not know. But it gets worse. Melith pulled up another file. Their military technology has always been their most advanced. Every major scientific discovery they have made has been driven by war. They invented computing machines to break enemy codes. They invented the internet to communicate during nuclear war. They even invented the technology for space travel as part of a military competition. Zorath stared at the data. It did not make sense. How could a species be so violent and so advanced at the same time? How could they kill each other by the millions and still manage to build a civilization? What happened after their nuclear weapons were invented? He asked. They did not have a major war between their great powers after that. The weapons were too terrible. But they did not stop fighting. They had smaller wars, proxy wars. They sold weapons to other groups and let them fight instead. They never stopped developing new ways to kill. And when they reached space, Melith was quiet for a long moment. Commander, they reached space only 200 years ago. In that time, they have colonized over 50 worlds. They have built a fleet of over 3,000 warships. Their population has grown to over 40 billion. Zorath felt his heart stop. 40 billion? In 200 years? Yes, and their military has grown even faster. They have been fighting someone, Commander. Something out in the far reaches of space. The records are not clear, but there are references to a war against something called the Swarm. Did they win? The records say the Swarm no longer exists. Zorath understood what that meant. The humans had not just beaten this enemy. They had destroyed them completely. Wiped them from existence. Commander, Melith said, there is something else. Something in their psychological profiles. Tell me. Humans have a unique emotional response to trauma. When most species experience terrible events, they become afraid. They avoid similar situations in the future. They become more cautious. That is natural. Humans are different. When they experience trauma, some of them become more aggressive, more determined. They call it the will to fight. Instead of backing down, they push forward. They become more dangerous when they are hurt, not less. Zora thought about what this meant. If you attacked humans, you did not weaken them. You made them angry. You gave them a reason to fight harder. Their entire species is like this? He asked. Not all of them, but enough. And their military selects for these traits. Their soldiers are chosen specifically because they have this response to danger. Melith paused. Commander, I analyzed the crew of that ship. All 312 of them have psychological profiles that indicate high aggression, low fear response, and strong pack bonding. Pack bonding? Loyalty, Commander. Extreme loyalty. They will die for each other without hesitation. They will fight to the last being to protect their group. It is hardwired into their biology. Zorath looked at the human ship again. 312 beings. Each one a predator. Each one loyal to the death. Each one sitting on enough firepower to destroy his entire fleet. What are they doing now? He asked. Nothing, Commander. They are just watching us. They are not preparing weapons? Not charging shields? No, they seem completely calm. This frightened Zorath more than anything else. A normal species facing a much larger ship from a powerful empire would be terrified. They would be running or preparing to fight. But the humans were just waiting, watching, like predators studying their prey. Incoming transmission, announced the communications officer. They want to talk. Zorath straightened in his throne. Perhaps there was still a way out of this. Perhaps the humans were more reasonable than their history suggested. Put it through. The main screen flickered and a human face appeared. It was a male. Based on the database information. He had a calm expression and steady eyes. He did not look afraid at all. Greetings, the human said. I am Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earthship Defiance. I represent the Terran Coalition. I noticed you have been scanning our vessel. I hope you found the experience educational. Zorath detected something in the human's voice. It took him a moment to identify it. It was amusement. The human was amused. I am Fleet Commander Zorath of the Velthari Empire, he replied, trying to keep his voice strong. You have entered territory claimed by the Empire. Explain your presence. The human called Webb tilted his head slightly. We are exploring, Commander. Mapping new regions of space. Making contact with new species. Standard stuff. The Valkyrie Empire does not recognize your right to explore this region. You will surrender your vessel for inspection. There was a pause. Then the human smiled. It was not a friendly smile. No, Webb said simply. I do not think we will do that. You refuse? I do. But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Webb leaned forward slightly. Let me tell you something about humans, Commander. We have read your history too. We know what your empire does to species that surrender. We know about the slavery and the destruction and the genocide. Zoroth said nothing. So let me be clear, Webb continued. The Defiance will not surrender. If you attack us, we will destroy you. Not might destroy you. We'll destroy you. Your ship, your crew, everything. And then we will send word back to Earth about what happened here. You are one ship, Zoroth said. The Empire has millions. Webb's smile did not waver. Commander, do you know what my ship is designed to do? It is a deep space patrol cruiser. Its job is to find threats and eliminate them before they become problems. And do you know what our doctrine says about overwhelming enemy forces? Zoroth waited. It says we do not need to match them. We just need to make the cost of victory higher than they are willing to pay. Webb paused. My ship carries enough antimatter to crack your planet's crust. I have crew members who would fly this ship straight into your capital city if I ordered them to. Not because they want to die, Commander. Because they believe some things are worth dying for. The transmission ended. Zoroth sat in his command throne, surrounded by his officers, and felt something he had never felt before, true fear. In the ready room next to the bridge of the Defiance, Katie Morgan was studying everything they knew about the Valkyrie Empire. The room was small but comfortable. A table in the center held a holographic display showing the surrounding space. Captain Webb sat on one side, drinking coffee. Chief Petty Officer Linda Reyes sat on the other side, scrolling through intelligence reports. They have been quiet for 10 minutes now, Linda said. No movement. No weapons charging. They are just sitting there. They are thinking, Webb replied, processing what they learned. Katie pulled up a star map on the holographic display. It showed the territory controlled by the Valkyrie Empire. The area was huge, covering hundreds of star systems. The Empire has been expanding for thousands of years, she said. They take a slow approach. Move into a region, scan for civilizations, evaluate their strength. If the target looks weak, they conquer them. If the target looks strong, they wait and build up forces until they are not strong anymore. Standard Imperial playbook, Webb said. Nothing we have not seen before. No, but look at this. Katie highlighted several systems on the map. These are species that resisted. The Drelthi, the Korvani, the Mishtari. All of them had significant military forces. All of them fought back. What happened to them? Gone, extinct. The Valkyrie did not just defeat them. They wiped them out completely, killed every last member of their species, and then destroyed their worlds. Webb set down his coffee cup. His face was hard. They practice genocide. Regularly. It is part of their doctrine. Any species that resists too strongly is classified as a threat to imperial security. Once that happens, there is no surrender, no negotiation. Total destruction. Linda looked up from her reports. Captain, the Drelthi had a fleet of over 200 warships. They held out for 30 years. In the end, the Valkyrie killed every single Drelthi in existence. 14 billion beings. The room was quiet for a moment. How do they justify this to themselves? Webb asked. Katie shrugged. They believe they are the superior species. They see other beings as resources to be used or threats to be eliminated. There is no middle ground. And the species they conquer? The ones who do not resist? Slavery, forced labor, breeding programs to create better workers. Some species have been under Velthury control for so long that they do not even remember being free. Webb stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars were bright and cold. Somewhere out there, billions of beings lived under the rule of the Velthury Empire. Slaves who had never known freedom. Species that have been broken and used for thousands of years. This is why we are out here, he said quietly. This is why we keep pushing into unknown space. Katie nodded. We knew there would be empires. Species that prey on others. It was inevitable. And now we have found one. We have found one, Katie agreed. The question is, what do we do about it? Webb turned back to face his officers. What are our options? Linda spoke first. We could leave. Return to Coalition space and report what we found. Let Command decide how to respond. That would take months, Katie said. And in that time, the Velthury would prepare. They would learn everything they could about us. They might even attack first. What about a diplomatic solution? Webb asked. Katie laughed, but there was no humor in it. The Velthury do not negotiate with species they consider inferior. And to them, any species that has not been in space for at least 1,000 years is inferior. They will see us as primitives. Dangerous primitives now that they know what we can do, but primitives nonetheless. So diplomacy is unlikely to work. It might buy time. Nothing more. Webb considered this. He had been a captain for 15 years. He had made hard decisions before. But this felt different. This felt like the kind of decision that would echo through history. Linda, he said, what do you know about the species currently under Velthury control? Linda checked her reports. There are at least 40 known subject species. Some have been enslaved for thousands of years. Others were conquered more recently. Most have no military capability. They are workers, servants, nothing more. Are there any resistance movements? Hard to say. The Velthury control all communications. But there are rumors. Stories of groups that still fight back in small ways. Sabotage mainly. Nothing organized. Webb nodded slowly. An idea was forming in his mind. It was dangerous. It might not work. But it was the kind of idea that humans were known for. Katie, he said, what would happen if the subject species suddenly had access to weapons? Real weapons, not just stolen tools? Katie raised an eyebrow. You are thinking about arming a rebellion. I am thinking about options. It would be chaos. The Velthury are spread thin. They control hundreds of worlds with a relatively small occupation force. If even a fraction of their slaves rose up at the same time, they would have to pull forces from everywhere, including their borders. Including their borders, Katie confirmed. They would be vulnerable. Linda shook her head. Captain, we are one ship. We cannot arm a rebellion across 40 species. We do not have the resources. No, Webb agreed. But we can plant seeds. We can make contact with resistance groups. We can share information. And most importantly, we can show them that the Velthury are not as powerful as they seem. How do we show them that? Webb smiled. It was the same smile he had shown Commander Zorth. The smile of a predator. We show them what happens when the Velthury scan a human warship. The door chimed, and Danny Liu's voice came through the speaker. Captain, the Velthury ship is hailing us again. Webb straightened his uniform. Put it through to the ready room. The holographic display shifted to show Commander Zoreth's face. The alien looked different now. The confidence was gone from his 4 eyes. He looked tired, worried. Captain Webb, Zoreth said, I have consulted with my officers. We have a proposal. I am listening. The Velthari Empire is willing to recognize the Terran Coalition as an independent power. We will not claim your territory as imperial space. We will not demand tribute or submission. All we ask is that you leave this region and do not return. Webb considered this. It was a reasonable offer by Velthari standards. They were essentially admitting that humans were too dangerous to conquer. They were backing down. That is an interesting offer, Webb said carefully. But I have some questions first. Ask, what about the species you have already conquered? The 40 civilizations you hold as slaves? Zorath seemed confused. What about them? They are imperial subjects. They do not concern you. But they do concern me, Commander. They concern me very much. There was a long pause. Zorath's 4 eyes narrowed. You cannot be suggesting that the Empire release its subjects. That is impossible. They are property of the Empire. They are people, Webb said quietly. Intelligent beings with the right to freedom. And no, I am not suggesting you release them. Not yet. But I want you to understand something. What? We know about them now. We know their names, their worlds, their histories. And we do not forget. Webb leaned forward. The Terran Coalition has a policy, Commander. We do not start wars, but we do not ignore suffering either. Sooner or later, we will return to this region. And when we do, we will remember what we learned here today. Zorath's face was unreadable. Is that a threat? It is a promise. The same kind of promise humans have made for all of our history. We remember. We always remember. And we always come back. The transmission ended. Katie looked at the captain with something like admiration. You just told the most powerful empire in the sector that we are coming for them someday. I told them the truth, Webb said. That is all. And if they decide to attack us before we can return with a fleet? Webb walked back to the viewport. The Velthari ship was still out there, massive and dangerous. But it was not moving. It was not attacking. Because the Velthari understood. Now, they had found something more dangerous than their empire. They had found humans. They will not attack, Webb said with certainty. They are thinking about survival now. About what happens if they make us angry. About what we might do if they give us a reason. And what will they do? They will go home. They will report what they found. And they will spend the next few years wondering when we are coming back. Webb smiled grimly. That is the human way, Katie. We do not always win the first battle, but we always win the war. Outside the viewport, the stars kept shining. And somewhere in the darkness, the seeds of change had already been planted. Fleet Commander Zorath stood alone in his private quarters aboard the Eternal Sovereignty. The room was large and comfortable, filled with treasures from 100 conquered worlds. Paintings, sculptures, rare metals, and gems. The rewards of 4 centuries of loyal service to the Empire. None of it mattered anymore. He stared at the datapad in his hands. On it was every piece of information they had gathered about the humans. Their biology, their history, their weapons, their psychology. He had read it all a dozen times now, and each time he felt the same cold weight in his stomach. Fear. Real fear. Something he had not felt since he was a child. The door chimed, and Melith entered. She looked as tired as he felt. Commander, the human ship is still holding position. They have not moved, I know. What are your orders? Zorath set down the datapad. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the human homeworld. A planet of heavy gravity and harsh conditions. A world that had created the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Tell me about Earth again, he said. Melith came to stand beside him. It is a death world, Commander. 70% covered in water that is poisonous to drink. The atmosphere contains a corrosive gas that humans need to breathe. The planet has extreme temperature changes, violent weather, and constant geological activity, and they evolved there. Yes, for millions of years. They were not always the dominant species. They had to fight for that position against thousands of competitors. Predators that wanted to eat them. Diseases that wanted to kill them. Weather that wanted to destroy them. Zorath nodded slowly. And this made them what they are. It made them survivors, Commander. Every human alive today is descended from beings who refused to die, who fought against impossible odds and won. It is in their genes, in their blood. The other species we have conquered, they did not have this. No, most intelligent species evolved on gentle worlds. Worlds with stable climates and few dangers. They developed civilizations slowly and peacefully. War was unusual for them. When we arrived with our fleets, they had no framework for resistance. But the humans are different. Completely different. They understand war in ways we cannot imagine. They have been practicing it against each other for their entire history. They have refined it, perfected it. And now they have brought that experience into space. Zora thought about the Drelthi, the last species that had seriously resisted the Empire. They had fought bravely. They had died bravely. And in the end, every single one of them had been killed. The Empire had won that war. But it had taken 30 years and cost millions of Volthera lives. The Drelthi had made them pay for every planet, every system, every victory dot, and the Drelthi were nothing compared to the humans. Malith, Zora said slowly, what do you think would happen if we attacked that ship? We would destroy it, Commander, eventually. But the captain was right. The cost would be enormous. Our ship would be crippled, if not destroyed. And the humans would know. They would send more ships. They would send fleets, Commander. And those fleets would not come to talk. Zorath remembered the human captain's words. They did not need to match the Empire ship for ship. They just needed to make the cost of victory too high. That was their strategy. That was how they thought about war. Call a meeting of senior officers, he said. We need to discuss our response. An hour later, Zorath sat at the head of a long table in the main conference room. Around him were his most trusted officers. They had all read the intelligence about the humans. They all wore the same expression of worried uncertainty. We have 3 options, Zorath began. First, we attack the human ship and destroy it. Second, we report back to the Imperial Council and recommend a full military response. Third, we leave this region and pretend we never found them. The first option is foolish, said his weapons officer, a scarred veteran named Krath. Even if we destroy this ship, we reveal our capabilities. The humans learn how we fight. They adapt. The second option is also dangerous, added his intelligence officer. A full military response would require pulling forces from other regions. Our enemies would notice. The Drakathi Confederacy has been waiting for such an opportunity. Zorath nodded. And the third option? Malith spoke carefully. If we leave and do not report what we found, we are guilty of treason. But more importantly, we delay the inevitable. The humans are expanding. Sooner or later, they will enter Imperial space. When they do, they will be stronger, and we will not have prepared. So there is no good option. No, Commander, there is not. Zorath looked around the table at his officers. They had served him for decades. They had conquered worlds together, destroyed species together. And now they were all facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy they could not easily defeat. There is a fourth option, Zorath said quietly. His officers waited. We tell the truth. We report exactly what we found. The human biology, psychology, history, weapons, everything. We let the Imperial Council make the decision. But we include a recommendation. What recommendation? Krath asked. That the Empire does not engage the humans. Not now. Not ever. The room erupted in protests. This was unprecedented. The Velthari Empire had never backed down from any species. To suggest doing so now was almost unthinkable. Zorath raised a hand for silence. Listen to me. I have been a fleet commander for 300 years. I have conquered more worlds than anyone in this room. I know war. And I am telling you now that war with the humans would be different from anything we have faced before. He stood and walked to the main display screen. With a gesture, he pulled up images from human history. Wars, battles, explosions, cities in ruins. Look at this. This is what they did to themselves. Before they had space travel. Before they had antimatter weapons. They destroyed cities with nuclear fire. They killed millions of their own kind. And then they rebuilt. They learned. They became stronger. He showed more images. Human soldiers in combat. Human faces twisted with rage and determination. Human hands building weapons of unimaginable destruction. These beings do not surrender. They do not stop. When you hurt them, they become more dangerous, not less. When you destroy their cities, they rebuild bigger ones. When you kill their warriors, more step forward to take their place. Zorath looked at each of his officers in turn. If we attack the humans, they will not negotiate. They will not submit. They will fight until one of us is extinct. And I'm not certain it would be them. The room was silent. Commander, Melith said softly, are you saying we cannot beat them? I am saying the cost of beating them might be more than the Empire can pay. I am saying that even if we win, there might not be much of an empire left to enjoy the victory. Krath spoke up. But if we do not act, they will grow stronger. They will expand. Eventually, they will be too powerful to stop. Perhaps, Zorath admitted. But consider the alternative. If we attack now and fail, we have made an enemy of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They will not stop until we are destroyed. They said as much. He returned to his seat. The humans have a saying, choose your battles. Sometimes the wisest choice is not to fight at all. The debate continued for another hour. In the end, Zorath's view prevailed. Not because his officers agreed with him. Not because they believed the Empire could not win. But because they had all seen the human data. They had all looked into the eyes of Captain Marcus Webb. And they had all seen what was looking back. Later that day, the Eternal Sovereignty turned away from the Kepler transit point. It jumped to hyperspace and began the long journey back to Velthari Prime. Zorath sat alone in his quarters, writing his report to the Imperial Council. He chose his words carefully. He described everything they had learned about the humans, their strengths, their weaknesses, their history of violence and survival. And he made his recommendation. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not give them a reason. He did not know if the council would listen. The Empire had never retreated from any challenge. Pride and arrogance ran deep in Velthari culture. But Zorath had seen something that most Velthari had never experienced. He had seen a species more dangerous than his own. And he hoped, with every fiber of his being, that his people were wise enough to leave them alone. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Webb watched the alien ship disappear into hyperspace. They are running, Danny said. Surprised. They are surviving, Webb corrected. The smart ones always do. Katie came to stand beside him. Do you think this is the end of it? Webb shook his head slowly. No, this is just the beginning. But we bought some time. Time for the coalition to prepare. Time for word to spread. Word about what? Webb looked at the empty space where the Velthari ship had been. Word about us. About what happens when you threaten humans. About what we are willing to do to protect ourselves and others. He paused. "The galaxy is about to learn something important, Katie." "What is that?" "That there are some things you should not disturb. Some enemies you should not make." He smiled grimly. "And some species you should never, ever scan." 6 months had passed since the encounter at the Kepler transit point. Ambassador Christopher Blake stood at the entrance to the Grand Forum of the Galactic Council. The building was enormous, designed to hold representatives from over 100 spacefaring species. It had been built by the Velthari thousands of years ago as a symbol of their power. Today, it would serve a different purpose. Christopher was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He did not look dangerous. He did not carry weapons. He was dressed in a simple gray suit with the emblem of the Terran Coalition on his chest, but he represented the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "Ambassador Blake," said a council aide, a small being with 3 arms and blue skin. "The council is ready for you." "Thank you." Christopher walked into the Grand Forum. The chamber was circular, with hundreds of seats arranged in rising tiers around a central speaking platform. Most of the seats were filled. Diplomats from dozens of species watched as the first human ever to address this body took his place at the podium. He could feel their eyes on him. Some curious, some afraid, some hostile. He did not blame them. News had spread quickly after the Kepler incident. Stories about the human ship that had made the mighty Velthari fleet commander retreat without firing a shot. Stories about human biology, human history, human weapons. Stories that made other species very nervous. "Honored delegates," Christopher began, his voice calm and clear. "I come before you today not as a conqueror, not as a threat, but as a neighbor. Humanity seeks friendship with all peaceful species. We seek trade, cultural exchange, and mutual understanding." He paused and looked around the chamber. "I know many of you are afraid of us. I know you have heard stories about our history, about our wars, about our capacity for destruction. These stories are true. I will not deny them." A murmur ran through the chamber. "Humans are the children of a violent world. We evolved through struggle and conflict. We have done terrible things to each other and to our planet. We carry the weight of that history with us." Christopher's voice softened. "But we also carry something else. We carry the memory of what that violence cost us. We remember the wars, the suffering, the millions who died. And we have decided that we do not want that future for anyone else." He looked directly at the Velthari delegation. Fleet Commander Zorath was not there, but other senior officials were. They sat stiff and silent. "We know about the empires," Christopher continued. "We know about the species that have been conquered and enslaved. We know about the civilizations that have been destroyed. And we want you to know something." The chamber was completely silent now. "Humanity will not ignore this. We cannot ignore it. It goes against everything we believe in. Every being deserves freedom. Every species deserves the right to determine its own future. These are not just words to us. They are principles we have fought and died for throughout our history." He took a deep breath. "Today, I am announcing the formation of a new alliance. We call it the Terran Coalition of Free Peoples. Any species that wishes to join is welcome. Any species that seeks protection will receive it. Any species that faces conquest will have an ally." The murmur grew louder. Delegates were looking at each other in shock. "Let me be clear about what this means. If any member of the coalition is attacked, all members will respond. The full military power of humanity will be brought to bear against the attacker. Not to conquer, not to enslave, but to defend, to protect, to ensure that no species is ever again destroyed simply because it was weaker than its neighbor." A delegate from one of the Velthari subject species stood up. His name was Toral, and he was the last free representative of a civilization that had been conquered 500 years ago. His voice shook as he spoke. Ambassador Blake, the Mishtari people were nearly destroyed by the Volturi. We have lived under their rule for generations. Are you saying that humanity would fight for us? That you would risk your own people to free ours? Christopher nodded. Yes, Delegate Toro. That is exactly what I am saying. But why? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you. Why would you fight for strangers? Christopher smiled gently. Because that is what humans do. We form bonds. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We stand up to bullies, even when it costs us. He paused. Especially when it costs us. The Valkyrie delegation stood as one. Their lead representative, a senior official named Vorth, spoke with barely controlled anger. This is an act of aggression against the Valkyrie Empire. You are threatening war. No, Christopher replied calmly. I am offering peace. Peace to everyone who wants it. The Empire can continue as it is. We will not attack your core worlds. We will not seek to destroy you. All we ask is that you stop expanding, stop conquering, stop enslaving, and if we refuse, then every species you threaten will know that they have an alternative. They can join the coalition. They can receive our protection. And if you attack them, you attack us. Vorth was trembling with rage. You are one species. We have ruled this region for 11,000 years. You cannot possibly stand against us. Christopher's expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted. Something cold and hard. I would not recommend testing that theory. Delegate Vorth. Fleet Commander Zorath scanned one of our medium patrol cruisers. He saw what we carry on a ship that we use for routine patrols. I imagine he included that information in his report. Vorth said nothing. His face was pale. We do not want war, Christopher continued. We have seen enough war to last us forever. But if war comes, we will not flinch from it. We will not negotiate. We will not surrender. We will fight with everything we have, and we will not stop until the threat is eliminated. They looked around the chamber one last time. That is our promise to the galaxy. Peace for those who want it. Protection for those who need it. And destruction for those who threaten the innocent. The vote that followed was not close. 42 species joined the Terran coalition that day. Within a year, the number had grown to over 100. The Valkyrie Empire did not collapse. It did not attack. It simply stopped expanding. For the first time in 11,000 years, the Empire's borders remained fixed. Its fleet stayed home. Its conquest machinery ground to a halt, not because they had become peaceful, but because they understood, finally, that the cost of expansion had become too high. The subject species began to change as well. Slowly at first, then faster. Resistance movements grew bolder. Demands for better treatment became louder. The Empire found itself facing internal pressure it had never experienced before, all because of one ship, one scan, one encounter. 5 years after the founding of the coalition, Captain Marcus Webb retired from active duty. He was given command of a research station on the edge of explored space, where he spent his days studying the stars and remembering the choices that had shaped history. Katie Morgan took command of the Defiance. She led it on dozens of missions, protecting coalition members and showing the flag in troubled regions. She never had to fire a shot in anger. The reputation of humanity was enough. Linda Reyes became the head of coalition intelligence. She spent her career building networks of contacts among the subject species, planting seeds of hope in places that had known only despair. Danny Liu rose to become an admiral. He commanded the First Fleet, the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. He hoped he would never have to use it, and Ambassador Christopher Blake continued his work. traveling from world to world, species to species, spreading the message of the coalition. The galaxy was changing, slowly, painfully, but changing. One afternoon, years after the events at the Kepler transit point, Christopher received a visitor at his office on Earth. It was a small alien, elderly, with 4 eyes that had seen too much. "Fleet Commander Zorath," Christopher said, surprised. "I did not expect to see you." The old Velthri nodded slowly. "I have retired from service. I came to see for myself." "See what?" "The species that changed everything." Zorath looked around the office, at the pictures on the walls, the artifacts from 100 worlds. "I have often wondered if I made the right choice that day. Walking away from your ship. Recommending that the Empire leave you alone. Do you regret it?" Zorath was quiet for a long moment. "I regret many things, Ambassador. I regret the species we destroyed, the civilizations we erased, the billions who died because of my orders." He met Christopher's eyes. "But I do not regret walking away from the Defiance. That was the first wise thing I had done in 400 years. Christopher poured 2 drinks and handed one to the old commander. "What changed your mind?" "I looked at your captain's face, and I saw something I had never seen before. Someone who was not afraid of dying. Someone who was only afraid of not fighting hard enough for what he believed in." Zorath took the drink. "I realized in that moment that we could not beat you. Not because you had better weapons, but because you believed in something more than survival." "What do you think we believe in?" Zorath considered the question. "Hope," he said finally. "You believe that the future can be better than the past. That beings can change. That empires can fall and something better can rise in their place." He shook his head slowly. "We Velthri never believed that. We thought power was everything. We were wrong." They sat in silence for a while. 2 old beings who had seen too much. "What will you do now?" "See,"